Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about the age of Napoleon. So remember, at the end of the French Revolution, Napoleon, he comes to power in France, and he ends the revolutionary period of France. He restores stability and success to France. So, how he comes to power in France, he creates a coup d'etat. He uses the military to overthrow the French government. He will become first consul. He says that he's going to relinquish his power once France is stabilized. A couple of years later, he's going to end up declaring himself Emperor of the French. Now, usually when you do something like this, it's bad, the people don't like it, but he was so popular with the French people that they supported him 110%. They were behind him the whole entire way. They cheered him on. Now, he is famous because not only does he become leader of France, but he was a military genius. He became general of the French military in early 20s. He led many victories in the wars between France and their neighbors during the Revolution. Remember, we talked about this with Austria because we were holding the King and Queen of France prisoner, and they weren't liking that, so he becomes popular during this time period. He is a war hero, and usually after times of war, people flock to their heroes as models, role models, and for people to give them guidance. So, Napoleon, when he comes to power, he does some reforms. Three of them were economic reforms. He instituted price controls to keep prices from going up, so to help the poor and hungry. He creates new businesses. He encouraged people to create new businesses. He builds new roads, canals, and bridges. He's doing everything that the people like in France. He's helping them all have a more successful and more meaningful life, and the people are behind this 100%. He also does some social reforms. He creates free public schools for all boys. Girls couldn't go to school, but boys. He allowed the peasants to keep the land. The peasants are happy. They can keep the land that they took from the church and stole from the executed nobles. And he orders the government to hire based only on merit. And it's no longer giving handouts to people you owe a favor to. Now it's whoever's best for the job. He also creates this whole entire new legal system called the Napoleonic Code, which is designed to restore order to France. It's all new laws. You're going to do it in Napoleonic way, Napoleon way. He knows what's best for you. Do what he wants you to do, and you're set for success. Now, Napoleon and Church. Napoleon knows that he needs to keep the Catholic Church happy, that he has made an enemy with them by letting the peasants keep the land they took from them during the revolution. So, he allows them to reopen their churches. He gives them religious freedoms in France, but he goes, you're not getting your land back. I'm not going to do that, but you can still practice your religion. So he tries to make a compromise with the church. Now, Napoleon has some big dreams for his empire. He wants to conquer all of Europe. So, on this map, you see the dark blue, that's the French territory. The light blue is going to be the territories he conquers. So, he had ambitions of having an overseas empire. He tries to invade England with the Battle of Trafalgar. The French Navy versus the British Navy. Remember, we talked about this. The British Navy is the best in the world. The French Navy gets destroyed. The French Navy loses 90% of all its ships. The British Navy lost 0. The only thing the British Navy lost was their Admiral Horatio Nelson. He dies in the fighting. But because they lose this battle, the French do, this ends all of Napoleon's overseas ambition, which results in the U.S. getting the Louisiana Purchase and us doubling the size of our country. So, he's going to focus on just conquering the land that you can walk to in Europe. He goes into Austria right here. He defeats them, he destroys them, and he builds this Arc of Triumph. He has this built in Paris. He walks his army through. It's a big deal. It's like, look at us. We're the best. We're the strongest. Fun fact, The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier for World War One is buried right here underneath the Arc de Triomphe. So, Napoleon, he lost to England. He's still sore about this, so he creates this continental system. He is not going to allow any of these European countries to trade with the British. He wants to hurt the British economy so badly that they're going to want to join him so they can actually start making money again. Now, this doesn't work, however. His mistake is Russia. Russia's the big country. Russia's European, Asian, they're having to prove themselves. When Napoleon took over Russia, Russia wasn't happy. So, Russia breaks the continental system. They start reopening trade with the British. Napoleon isn't happy about this, so he's going to send his army into Russia to force them to do what he tells them to do. Now, the problem is, he's stupid and he attacks during winter. Russian winters are very cold. The Russians are used to this. The French, not so much. One way Napoleon moved his army so fast was he had his army live off the land. So, Russia knows this. When Napoleon's army gets into Russia, all the land is burnt. They used a method called scorched earth. So when they retreated, they burned everything, destroyed all resources that could be used as an enemy. So, Napoleon gets stuck in the middle of Russia. Winter hits. They have no supplies. They are forced to retreat. Majority of Napoleon's army dies on the way back to France from starvation or freezing to death. And this just destroys the morale for his soldiers, his men, and it's a big embarrassment for France. And other countries are realizing that they can actually defeat France, and France has nothing on them anymore. So, Napoleon's downfall. 2 battles. The Battle of Leipzig, Napoleon loses to a force of Austrians, British, and Russians, and he's forced to exile to tiny island of Elba in the Mediterranean. So it's a big embarrassment. They kick him out. Napoleon will then escape the island of Elba. He will come back to France and take over the government again and rule for what's known as the 100-day period. He then will go to battle with the British and Russians again. At the Battle of Waterloo, he will get his butt kicked a second time, and they go, that's it. We're going to exile you to a tiny island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic. He will never return to France. He actually dies on the island from cancer. He had stomach cancer. That's all why, all those images you see, he's always holding his stomach. They believe ulcers and all that. His body will be returned to France. It will be buried in the military school. Now, I say body, they cremated him on St. Helena, so they bring his ashes, and his ashes are buried in 7 coffins, one inside of another, all made out of different material. And it's the only thing in the room with a gold dome on top. France, they hold Napoleon in very high regards. Now, Europe has to decide what to do after the Congress of Vienna. So what they decide to do is they make it so no country is strong enough to fight the others. They make everybody returns to the same level, even playing field, and it keeps the peace more or less until World War I. You will have some small fighting taking place, but nothing as big as this or the 7 Years' War that gets all these countries involved. Now, they want to prevent the idea of revolutionary ideals being spread. They want to keep people from wanting to revolt, and they want to repress this nationalism ideals. They want the people to return to monarchies. So they return to monarchy to France, Portugal, Spain, and Italy. All these countries that Napoleon had taken over and made himself emperor, they put the monarchs in charge again. So now the kings are back, and they believe this is what's best for the country. There will be other French revolutions after this. You have the Revolution of 1830, Revolution of 1848. They go back and forth between monarch. You have Napoleon III, who is Napoleon Bonaparte's nephew, names himself emperor. Eventually, France will get it right, and they will have presidents, but not until the second half of the 1800s. So, that is Napoleonic Wars, Age of Napoleon. We will talk about now the Latin American revolutions and how what was going on in Europe causes other countries around the world to free themselves from monarchical colonial rule.